This season, there's been one player that's been on the mind of every single team in world football in terms of getting a transfer in the summer and even previous winter windows. He is Sporting's Swedish sensation. Try saying that 3 times fast. And as of recording, he has got 91 goals in 96 appearances and is on track to win his 2nd consecutive league title, if things go well, knock on wood. But as you could imagine, that goal scoring form and what he brings to Sporting has him a lot of potential suitors, and we've seen a lot, and I mean a lot, of transfer rumours concerning Viktor Gyökeres. But in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 teams that I think Gyökeres should go to. These are teams that he has been linked to before. I'm going to rank them with 5 being I don't think he should go there, and then 4, could see, 3 makes sense, 2 makes sense, and then 1, the absolute priority, I think he should go or who should sign him. But I thought, might just be a good thing for me, a Sporting fan, to give my opinion on Viktor Gyökeres. In my opinion, he's the best striker this league's ever seen. I think the only comparison really is with Falcao, but to be honest, this might be biased, I don't know. You put Viktor Gyökeres in that team that Porto won the Europa League with, you've got Hulk, you've got James Rodriguez, you've got João Moutinho, you've got loads of players in there, which is arguably a better squad and stronger squad than Sporting have at the moment. If you put Viktor Gyökeres in there, he's matching the same numbers. If you put Falcao in this Sporting team, I don't know, but I guess we'll never know. But in my opinion, I think he's the best striker this league's ever seen. And I think people who doubt his ability and his excellence are just playing wrong. And people will say, and I saw this tweet earlier today about him not being, a big league, whatever. And people will make that comparison all the time. But I just have a few examples to give. He scored, obviously, a hat-trick against Man City. You can say they were a depleted team, but to score a hat-trick against a team in any Premier League is, a big step. And, he absolutely dominated that game. And people say, you know what, he scored 2 penalties. Well, when is being a good penalty taker a bad thing? A guaranteed goal from the penalty spot is a good thing for a team to have. He also has scored many goals against FC Porto. And people will say, oh, FC Porto aren't that good. But Arsenal last year, in over 120 minutes, only scored once against Porto and actually had to go to penalties to beat them. And Porto's main centre-back at that time was Pepe, who even still in the Euros in 2024 was one of the best centre-backs a lot of people were saying in the world. And I still think if he didn't retire, he'd still probably be up in that upper echelon anyway. He's also scored against a World Cup winner, which, a year before he joined Sporting, Otamendi was a World Cup winner. Scored against him and Antonio Silva. He scored against Atalanta, one of the best defensive teams in Europe. Scored in the Champions League against Lille and RB Leipzig. So to say he's just scoring against the lesser known teams, he is a big game player. He's even scored a few goals for Sweden as well, rocking the jersey today for Viktor Gyökeres. But to me, I think it is a lazy comparison when people say, oh, look at Darwin Núñez or look at this person, this person, this person. Not all one player is the same. And if you look at Viktor Gyökeres, I think he is a 100%. Well, I don't think anything is ever 100% a sure thing, but in terms of like 99%, I think if he goes to any of the teams I mentioned, he improves them. But enough of my ramble. This is which club should sign Viktor Gyökeres this summer. So I'm going to get this one out of the way nice and early because I think it's one that he's been linked with quite a few times, but in my opinion, it's just the complete wrong move if he does go there or if he's even wanted there. And that is Ruben Amorim's Manchester United at number 5. I just personally think the way Man United are in terms of, rebuilding and being sort of an unsure thing. Technically they could make Champions League if they win Europa League. I'm recording this on the 24th of April. Now, of course, Man United do need a striker. But I think in terms of being a sure thing, of course, Viktor Gyökeres is there. But I don't think he's at the level that he should be trying to prove himself at. If you look at the teams I'm going to mention in this list, a lot of them are in Champions League football and are competing at the higher ends of the table in their respective leagues. And I just think there's too many question marks around Manchester United for now. I think in maybe a few years' time you could make the argument, but Viktor Gyökeres is not going to be here in a few years' time. He's going to be at one of these clubs I mentioned, probably, if not a club, that sneaks in and manages to get him. Number 1 basically is the uncertainty around it. Number 2, I do wonder what Viktor Gyökeres' relationship with Ruben Amorim was. So if you ask a lot of people in Portugal and a lot of the media and the journalists and stuff, they will tell you that Ruben Amorim convinced Viktor Gyökeres to stay for one more season than he was originally going to, so we could win the double. He said that to a few of the other players as well, allegedly. But, at the first sign of calling, and I'm not saying Ruben Amorim was wrong or right, whatever. I understand why he went to Manchester United, but at the first sign of getting out, he left. And I've mentioned it before, he tried to do the same at West Ham in early, I believe it was April at the time, so probably a year ago today or something like that. But I do wonder if Viktor Gyökeres does hold a bit of resentment to Amorim. If he's going to do that at Sporting, he could, leave Man United for a bigger job if it were to come. I don't think Ruben Amorim's really proven himself that much at Man United. Obviously, still very early. He still, like I said, could win the Champions League. But I do wonder if there is a disconnect between Viktor Gyökeres and Ruben Amorim. Maybe. I don't know. But I do think there might be a rift. And I think, Ruben Amorim did get the best out of Viktor Gyökeres. So I can understand why people would want him to link, we want to link Viktor Gyökeres to United. But I think at the moment, it's just really not a good situation for him to be in. Obviously, it would be a great coup for the club and for Ruben Amorim getting a proven goal scorer that he knows. But in terms of what's been happening at Old Trafford recently with all the controversies and the player signings, I don't think it's a good idea I would say for either party. I think it would be a good idea for Manchester United, but in terms of Viktor Gyökeres, I don't think it would be a smooth move. I don't think it'd be a good transition for him. So in that case, that is why I've got Man United at number 5. And at number 4, I've got an English-based club again, and that is Chelsea. So this one, again, I would still say should be a wary one for the Gyökeres. I think, they have a good relationship with Sporting. Chelsea do, getting Giovanni Kenda in this season. There was a few links a few years ago that, Sporting could be like a sort of satellite club for Chelsea. Things didn't actually turn out that way. But, I think there's still a good relationship there. I think Chelsea do need a striker. I do love Nicholas Jackson. I think he's a very good player, but in terms of an out-and-out goal scorer, I do think Chelsea are missing that. But again, similar to the Manchester United thing, Chelsea are obviously not as bad as Manchester United have been, but there's still a lot of questions around if Enzo Maresca could be the manager next season. If they will get Champions League football, how they're going to progress in other competitions like the Conference League and obviously the Premier League. And I do think that maybe this could be a bad move for Gyökeres. But in terms of positives for this move, I think someone being in front of Cole Palmer that is a goal scorer and is able to create chances like Viktor Gyökeres is and be on the end of those passes from guys like, Cole Palmer. Even on the wing, he's got Madueke and, possibly in the future Giovanni Kenda, who he's used to. So I do think Viktor Gyökeres would be a good fit for Chelsea. In terms of tactical style, I do think Chelsea are missing someone like Viktor Gyökeres to, score in the goals. I do think, like I said, I like Nicholas Jackson, but he does miss a lot of opportunities. It's no, knock on him. He just isn't that good of a goal scorer. He's improved this season compared to last. But I do think Chelsea are sort of one of them up and down teams. Like they could finish 4th or 5th this year. But if I told you I think they're going to finish 8th or 9th next year, you wouldn't bat an eye, would you? It's a very Chelsea thing, especially at the moment. And the thing with Chelsea, they've just got so many players on their books at the moment. They've got the issue with Jadon Sancho. Apparently, they have a clause to not activate it, but they have to pay Manchester United money or something. And of course, money's not an issue for Chelsea. I don't know about the financial fair play aspects, but as far as I know, the budget for Chelsea is pretty much limitless. They can get anyone they want in. But I don't know how it works with the new FFP and things like that. But I think it would be good move tactically, but again, I think it's just everything else. I really don't know if Enzo Maresca is the right man to lead Chelsea forward. I think there have already been question marks about his tenure and if they're going to get someone more, a bigger name or a different project manager in. But on that same vein, Chelsea could still finish in the Champions League spots and they could, compete. They could win the Conference League and get Europa League again. But it's just as likely they will get Champions League football. As of now, Chelsea are 3 points behind Nottingham Forest in 4th place. So you don't know what's going to happen. They play Everton on Saturday of recording this video. So I don't know what the results will say. By this video comes out, maybe, things have gone good. Maybe things haven't. But I don't think they're that far off. Of course, they're still in the Conference League as well. So another European competition could be Chelsea's. But at the same point, who knows what's going to happen at that point. But in terms of right here, right now, I think it'll probably be a bad move, but not as bad as I think the Man United move could be for Viktor Gyökeres. Just because, with Man United, if things go wrong, they go wrong drastically, and it's not, it's not a good environment to be in. I don't think Old Trafford's been a good environment to be in for a player for the last almost 10 years. I think, especially more recently, like maybe the past sort of 4 or 5 years. But I don't think Chelsea has been that great either. But if you're looking at right now and, in terms of who has the brighter future, you would say Chelsea right now in terms of the way they're progressing. But like I said, if I said to you next year they're going to finish in 8th, 9th, you wouldn't bat an eye, because this Chelsea team is very inconsistent. Obviously, a lot of it revolves around injuries and, Reece James not being fit, if Cole Palmer manages to stay healthy, things like that. But, I think it would be still a bad move, but I don't think it would be as bad as Manchester United. I think it's definitely one to look out for. I do think Chelsea could sneak in with a bid and maybe try their luck, especially, like I said, the good relationship with Sporting could help that. But, time will tell. Number 3, we are going abroad for this one, and I'm going to go with FC Barcelona. So with this one, I am not familiar with Barcelona's finances. I know they've been in money troubles throughout the last few years, but they have made some signings apparently with cash. Dani Olmo was brought in for 55 million euros, and I think it will take around the sort of 60-70 mark to get Viktor Gyökeres. So if they do manage to raise funds, I could see them going for it. And at that point as well, the Club World Cup is happening. So a lot of these clubs, I think every club I mentioned in this list is going to be in that tournament. So for me, I think, they could get some more money for that and end up splashing it on a transfer. And for me, this one, I think, is a really good move for Gyökeres if they can afford it. I think Lewandowski, as great as a striker as he is, I think he is, of course, on the way out. He's nearly 40 at this point. So he's going to be slowing down, and I think if you have a natural replacement for him, which will be Viktor Gyökeres, it would be a very good, almost like-for-like replacement. Barcelona are also top of the league as well, so maybe that affects their financial plans for the future, but I think it would be a very good replacement right now. This season, Robert Lewandowski has 25 goals for Barcelona, so he's not really slowing down that much. He's still a very prolific goal scorer. But having someone like Viktor Gyökeres could make that transition a little bit easier for Barcelona. And if you look at Barcelona's squad, there isn't really another striker there to play if Lewandowski does get hurt. And the only thing would be with this transfer is who are you starting? Are you starting them both? In the formation that is played by Barcelona, obviously they play with one striker at the moment. And they do use Fernan Torres as a sort of false 9 striker as well. But for me, if you put Viktor Gyökeres in there, you'll guarantee goals, especially with the wing play from Rafinha, Yamal. Even in lesser cases, someone like Ansu Fati, and of course playing Fernan Torres out on the wing as well. And having someone in behind, like I mentioned for Chelsea with Cole Palmer, having that with Dani Olmo, providing Gyökeres some more space, some more opportunities, that could be a dividends paid for Barcelona. But I also think it's a very similar tempo to the Portuguese league. He's not going to be relocating far. It's not going to be much of a change for him to go from Lisbon to Barcelona. And I do think Hansi Flick would be a good manager to get the best out of Viktor Gyökeres. Like I mentioned before, Amorim's probably got the best out of him so far. Rui Borges is doing okay with him as well. But I do think someone like Hansi Flick would be a good mentor for Gyökeres and maybe unlock him on a larger scale for Barcelona in the league and the Champions League. Like I mentioned in the intro of this video, Viktor Gyökeres does score in big games against Porto, Benfica, Atalanta, Leipzig. You can go back and list all the teams I've named there. Of course, against Manchester City. But I think that will translate to La Liga and Clásicos and things like that. Champions League, I think you would need someone for a club like Barcelona as they want to be competing for Champions League and league titles, Copa del Rey, things like that. And having someone who shows up in big games like Viktor Gyökeres is a plus. And I think if they do have the money, it would be a very successful transfer for all parties for this one. But like I said, it remains to be seen if they do even have the money for it. But if they do, I would say this would be on the list as the sort of third best option. This one's sort of a 50-50. I'd say this is probably more of a safer option than the last two. The last two were the sort of, I guess riskier option. This one is a safe option. And I do think I can actually see Viktor Gyökeres in the Camp Nou and tearing up La Liga. And I think it would be a decent deal for all parties if they get that done. So yeah, number 3 is going to be Barcelona. And for number 2, this is going to be a different team, not in Spain, not in England. It's going to be Paris Saint-Germain. So for me, I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. PSG's really only out-and-out striker is Gonzalo Ramos, and I think he's okay, but I don't think he's anything special. But in terms of, competing for Champions League, the league is already won by PSG, by the way. But in terms of Champions League, you'd need someone who is a proven goal scorer to get you goals, and that is Viktor Gyökeres. And of course, you've got Dembele playing as more of a forward role, especially this season, and Dembele has been killing it for PSG. but I think you can unlock him even more and have a better strike partner with Viktor Gyökeres and having Dembele and Kvaratskhelia on separate wings. And if you look at the numbers for PSG, Dembele has 21 goals, Barcola has 13, and Gonzalo Ramos only has 7. So adding someone with Viktor Gyökeres' profile and having those goals to boot, of course at Sporting this season alone, Viktor Gyökeres has 34 goals on an XG average of only 26.5 goals. And I know what people are saying, and they've said before, you know, it's the Portuguese league, but is in reality Ligue 1 that much more of a difficult league than Liga Portugal? I know, of course, there's some great teams there like Marseille, you've got Lyon, you've got other teams I'm going to fail to mention, but I think it would be a similar case of goal scoring numbers for Viktor Gyökeres if he did go to France, especially in a team as stacked as Paris Saint-Germain. And another positive side of this is that PSG are recruiting very smart. Their team is built for the future. And bringing someone like Viktor Gyökeres, who isn't that old but can still give you a decent few years, is going to be crucial to their system. And the way they've been able to buy, if you look at how smart their buying has been, and if you look at the players that they've signed, the smart ones, who've been their best players, João Neves, you've got Vitinha, you've got Nuno Mendes. Where are all of these players and talents coming from? Liga Portugal. So Nuno Mendes came in as one of the best left backs in the world. João Neves is one of the best midfielders in the world, as is Vitinha. So you could bring someone else from Liga Portugal and put him in that category as well, Viktor Gyökeres, to tear up Ligue 1 and, you know, like I said, maybe get them over the line in the Champions League. It's again one of them things I'm going to unfortunately have to say, I don't know what's going to happen with the Champions League with PSG and their opponents, but I think maybe they're the favourites. I don't know. I don't know what the betting odds say. I would personally say PSG do have a very good chance. It's going to be tough, but if they had an out-and-out goal scorer, someone like Viktor Gyökeres, it might make life a little bit easier for him. But at this same point, a lot of people would think maybe this move's a bit underwhelming because he's not really going in a league to prove himself. He's already been in England, don't forget, with Coventry, and he had a little bit of a stint at Brighton too. So I think this would be a very good and safe option for Viktor Gyökeres, going to a league that he, one, is going to get more exposure, two, is going to get more votes in things like if he gets there, and, you know, obviously don't want to go too far in the future and, you know, make myself look silly, but could get stuff like Ballon d'Ors and attacking, you know, Team of the Year credits. Much like Falcao did when he was at Porto. As soon as he went to Atletico Madrid, he started getting the votes. And you look at any player, as soon as they leave Liga Portugal, like I mentioned, João Neves and Vitinha and those guys, they're going to get mentioned for those. Nuno Mendes is going to get mentioned for those awards and stuff, and, you know, Team of the Year and things like that. So I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility, but I also think it's a safe option. It's a league he's not been to before, but it's a league that I think he'll do very well in. They will still have, of course, competing in the Champions League, and he'll have minutes to improve there and impress there. So I think it's a very safe option for Viktor Gyökeres. I do think maybe it'd be a bit underwhelming if you wanted to see in a league such as the Premier League, where is, you know, a lot of people will think he'll go, but I don't think PSG is a move to you know, laugh at. I do think they're the underdogs in this transfer window for Viktor Gyökeres signing. I think is a really smart signing for club and player, and I think obviously PSG have unlimited wealth still, so they can get that. But like I said, they've been buying really smart recently, and I think this would be a smart deal for them. I think it would go to what their principles have been in sort of buying the younger talent and sort of building for the future, but also in a win now mode, and it's proved that they have been able to do that by getting to the semi-finals of the Champions League. So who knows, they've already won the league, as I said as well, so I think this would be another good move for Viktor Gyökeres. But yeah, I think there is one team that I think would be, you know, a solid option for him. I think they should go for him, and my number one team is, of course, him staying at Sporting for the rest of his career and retiring. No, of course, number one is going to be in North London, and that is going to be Arsenal. I've said this since I've started making videos on this channel. It is just the last piece of the puzzle for me is to put Viktor Gyökeres in there. And, you know, I could look silly because Arsenal could go in the Champions League and they could do it without an out-and-out striker. They could do it with Kai Havertz and, you know, Gabi Jesus. Even them two guys are injured, playing Marino up front. But I think every Arsenal fan can see, and every pundit can see, that they are missing an out-and-out goal scorer. I actually rate Kai Havertz quite highly. Not in terms of a striker, but I do think he's a great player. He's someone who can do well and has proven he can do well on the big stage in the big moments. But I think Arsenal are missing a goal scorer, and people want to smirk and laugh at, you know, penalties or whatever and things like that. Viktor Gyökeres only against scoring against the lower league opposition. One, the penalties thing, like I said, when is scoring penalties been a bad thing? People say, Viktor Gyokeres' stats are inflated by penalties. Like I said, that's a good thing. He can score penalties, and to be honest, if you watch him, most of the penalties he wins himself by creating his own chances and being on the end of stuff and being a very dangerous attacker, and something that Arsenal are lacking. Goals. If you look at Arsenal's last few results in the league, you can see they are lacking a goal scorer. And of course, like I said, this is due to injuries, the Havertz and Jesus being out. But in general, if you look at the last few games, only scoring 1 against Brentford, 1 against Everton, 2 against Fulham, 1 against Chelsea, 1 against Man United, 0 against Nottingham Forest, 0 against West Ham, only 2 against Leicester. Of course, you can go back to the 5-1 of City, which was, a great result. I'm just saying, Sporting did the same with Viktor Gyökeres, so who knows. But I think they are lacking goals, and everyone can see it, apparently, apart from Mikel Arteta. And I think this season is different if Viktor Gyökeres is at Arsenal. Of course, it's much different for Sporting, so I'm very glad he's not gone yet. But this is the sure thing, as Gary Neville would say. This is the banker. This is the one that I think makes the most sense out of all the teams I've named. Arsenal are going to arguably finish in second. They are 7 points ahead of Newcastle and Nottingham Forest, but both of them do have a game in hand against Arsenal. There's still a lot of football to play, of course. They might drop from that spot. But as far as we know, they're going to get Champions League. They're in the semi-finals of the Champions League. They could even go in to win the competition. But in terms of getting over the hurdle to win that league title, I think this season is a lot different if Viktor Gyökeres is there, if he's out there scoring the goals for him. Just to put this in reference, the top goal scorer for Arsenal right now is Kai Havertz with 9 goals. Not even double-digit goals. 9. Up next is Trossard on 8. And then Gabriel Martinelli on 7. Gyökeres has scored more goals than all of them combined. And like I said, you can make fun of the league or whatever. But that is crazy. That is crazy numbers. A team like Arsenal should have a goal scorer. We've mentioned it. Dembele's on 21 goals. Lewandowski's on 25 goals. These are goal scorers. This is what the big teams have and what teams need. And for some reason, Arsenal just don't seem to want one or have one. They've had opportunities to get one in. And people will mention, look at Sesko and Osimhen instead because they're more proven apparently, or they have better upside, they're younger, whatever. But I think this is a sure thing. And I think everyone that is going to say, Viktor Gyökeres is overrated, he's got flop written all over him, blah, blah, blah. I think they're going to just look silly at the end of this because Viktor Gyökeres is going to go to another team and play considerably well and win lots of things, maybe depending on the team he goes to. And everyone's going to look silly because they'll be like, we wanted this guy instead and, we're not doing very well. And, or we said this guy's going to flop and blah, blah, blah. And there's the argument of, the strikers from Liga Portugal. There hasn't been many success stories. I'll admit, there's not been much. But there has been a guy called Radamel Falcao who went to Atletico Madrid and still tore it up and was one of the best strikers in the world. Even when he was at Monaco, he was very good. It was unfortunate that the injuries got him down, but he was one of the best strikers in the world at that point. And people will point to guys like Darwin Núñez, they'll point to, even further back, Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, Slimani, blah, blah, blah. None of those guys, especially Darwin Núñez, and that is the worst comparison I see is Darwin Núñez. He was nowhere near as good as Viktor Gyökeres was. If Viktor Gyökeres leaves Sporting, it will shatter the heart of Sporting fans, and Porto and Benfica fans will cheer because they've got a demon out of their league and it makes the Liga a more even playing field. When Darwin left Benfica, it was actually Benfica fans celebrating and Sporting and Porto fans being like, man, I can't believe they just got so much money for a bum. And I'm not a footballer, right? I can't say here and say that I'm better than Darwin Núñez, whatever. Darwin Núñez is a good player in his own right. He's better. He has more skill than I will ever have, right? But when Benfica fans are telling you they're glad to get rid of him, that should be an issue. They wouldn't want to get rid of someone. They wouldn't do that for someone they like. If it was back in the day, someone like Oscar Cardozo, or even, further back, you could look at guys like Rui Costa or those guys. When those guys left Benfica, they were sad because they were good players and they were leaving and they were moving on and they were leaving a team weaker. Darwin didn't do that. Darwin left, and I'm pretty sure the season after Benfica won the league. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy to think that is the reality of the situation. They got better without Darwin Núñez because Darwin Núñez wasn't good. In his first season at Benfica, Sebastian Coates had one less goal than him. A centre-back had one less goal than Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez was not prolific in Liga Portugal. He did score a lot of goals in that last season, but if you ask any Benfica fan, Sporting fan, whatever, he missed, arguably 20 more. Darwin Núñez was never as good as Viktor Gyokeres has been in the league, and that's not a knock to Darwin. There hasn't been many strikers. The only strikers in comparison to the numbers is Mario Jardel, and of course Eusebio Peroteu, who I made the video on before. Make sure you check that out as well. Falcao I mentioned as well. You got guys like Oscar Cardozo too, but he's an anomaly. There isn't many players you can compare Viktor Gyokeres to because he's just one of a kind, really. So I know I'm going a bit of a tangent here, a bit of a rant, but when people say and use it as an excuse, they'll mention Darwin, they'll mention the league, they'll mention, the quality of teams, they'll mention penalties, they'll mention everything else. It's lazy because you're just not watching what's in front of you. And I know the Portuguese league is weaker than the Premier League and the league or whatever, but he's still scoring goals on big stages. It's not just against teams like, no disrespect, Boavista or Moreirense or teams like that. It's big teams across Europe that I mentioned before. I'm not going to do the favour of repeating it again, but I think he is a sure thing. Wherever he goes, he's going to do well. But in terms of those five, I'd rank him like that. I think Manchester United, for any player, not just Gyökeres, to be fair, let me just put that out there. I think for any player, they're looking at Manchester United and being like, I don't know if I should go there at the moment. The club's in too much turmoil. There's a lot of rebuilding job in there. I don't know if they have the money to spend. Poor Jim Ratcliffe is getting rid of dinner ladies and stuff who've been there for many years. So I don't know what the money situation is anyway. But with that being said, at the end of the day, I think United 5th, Chelsea 4th, Barcelona 3rd, PSG 2nd, and Arsenal 1st. I think PSG are definitely the ones to watch out for, and I think that would be a really good move for all parties involved. Arsenal, I still think, though, is a sure thing. If they don't get that done in the summer, which apparently the sporting director wants to do, I would say they're missing out on a trick. Sesko could be good, could even be better, but time will tell. You're looking at someone who scores many goals now and is on fire now. That is Viktor Gyökeres. But anyway, I've been Sam Fonseca. I hope you have enjoyed this video. A bit of a different one to a startup documentary videos that I've done before. I mentioned it earlier, but if you want to check out this video, the guy who scored many goals you've probably never even heard of, the best goals per game ratio of all time as of now, something that would probably never be broken, the story of Peroteu. Other than that, I've been Sam Fonseca. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, man. Peace.